Ethereum getting ready to do something maybe we have not seen before, and that, of course, is not only price projections, but also some of the things that I think are going to impact this ecosystem long term. You guys don't want to miss it. My name is Paul Bear. Welcome back into Tech Path. Before we get started, I want to play a video from our sponsors. Let's get started. You can actually use our code and it is going to give you a discount. So check that out. You get the ring and 2 cards with it. Quantities are limited, so be the first to order. Get out there and do it now and get started. All right, let's get into Ethereum. There's a lot happening right now. This was a post here from Matt Hougan over on Bitwise, and he hits on a couple of points here. One, of course, is his prediction. ETP inflows will push prices to all-time highs above 5,000 for Ethereum. I want to go to a clip because this will break down some of the things of his strategies and some of the things he thinks are going to happen. Take a look.
I think some people are worried because Ethereum futures ETFs sort of sputtered out of the gate. Bitcoin futures ETFs, which launched a few years ago, did well. Ethereum futures ETFs did relatively poorly, but they really launched into the teeth of a bear market. And I think the buyer of a futures ETF is different than a buyer of an Ethereum ETF. My view is pretty simple, which is everywhere you look, if investors have a choice to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum, they end up buying both. In Europe, there are Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs. The market's about 75-25. In Canada, there are Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs. The market's about 75 and 25. On centralized and decentralized exchanges, you can buy Bitcoin and you can buy Ethereum, and the market's about 75 and 25. Everywhere you look, this is the ratio that people see. Now the first few days could be weird because you have ETH, this grayscale product, which outflows, and the first few days of the Bitcoin ETFs were weird. We don't remember this, but Bitcoin's price went from 50 to 40, and everyone assumed Bitcoin ETFs are a dud, they're not going anywhere, and then guess what? They were the most successful of all time, and the price ripped to a new all-time high.
All right, so there were a few things within what Matt was talking about in terms of the Bitcoin ETF success, and he is right. I mean, it was the teeth of the bear market. I think this, of course, timing-wise, is really lining up for Ethereum as being a almost pivotal time because we are in the precursor to a run-up. You're getting a chance to see really maybe a political landscape change, and you've got the financial architecture that's being backed by companies like BlackRock and many others that understand that tokenized securities and assets are really going to change the future, and Ethereum is part of that. I want to go to another clip here. He talks about supply and demand and price and whether or not this is going to make a difference on the ETH ETF. Take a look.
The short-term price is dictated by supply and demand. And in this case, there is no net new supply. Absolutely, I think the same amount of inflows will have a larger impact on price on a market cap proportion basis for Ethereum than it did with Bitcoin, because you don't have, Bitcoin miners have to sell their Bitcoin. They have direct costs. There is no net new supply of ETH. So I absolutely think it will have a significant impact on price.
Look at the trade volume right now, almost half of what we're seeing on Bitcoin. So, which gets me into my prediction, which is this is going to be a lot bigger than almost everyone out there has been anticipating. There's a couple of clips, though. I want to get into one that goes into it. This was Vance Spencer actually talking about this. Remember, this is one of the guys that was anticipating that we would see an ETH ETF when everybody else was saying no way, including a lot of major Wall Street analysts. Let's go to that clip because I think this will get you in the frame of what he's talking about. Take a look.
We've done a couple of times like $200-300 million buys of various cryptos, and what's really obvious to you is that the books are actually very thin. Like 99% of the volume that's transacting, whatever, like the 20, 30, $40 billion a day of volume, is just market makers trading against each other. If you have 25 to 50 billion of inflows, which is what today's annualization would be of the inflows, if you have something for ETH, it's going to be similar. There's just not enough coins to go around. I don't think it's unreasonable that Bitcoin goes to 1 million at some point, ETH goes to 100K. You just don't really witness the burst of an asset class very often. And as I said, these books are extremely thin. Like if you do try to buy $100 million of crypto, you're going to move the price 5 or 10%. And there's just not that many coins.
Anthony.
I want Vance to keep talking.
And if you look at ETH, right now, volume is at about 18 billion. So we're talking about almost twice that of the volume that's already existing. And that is just on the first year. And he even mentioned this in the video there, is the birth of an asset class. Another clip here by Matt Hougan was talking about the idea of rebalancing these portfolios. And this gets into portfolios and the assignment of how ETH and Bitcoin may play out. Take a look.
If you add ETH to the portfolio and you rebalance periodically, like once a year or once a quarter, to reweight those assets, historically you get higher returns, similar volatility, so higher risk-adjusted returns, and a lower maximum drawdown, which is the measure of like the most your portfolio is worth to the least it's worth at the bottom of a trough. And it's an important statistic because you feel that in your gut, right, when your portfolio falls 25%. So obviously, if you do a short-term look, you can find times where it's better to be Bitcoin only, or it's times to better be ETH only, because there are periods where Bitcoin outperforms and period where ETH outperforms. And if you know those in advance, God bless you. But if you want to look over a full portfolio cycle, the data shows, yeah, you want to smash them together.
So I think that's what's going to happen, is we're going to see a lot more asset managers do this kind of strategy in terms of balancing both assets within these portfolios. The question will be the mix and to what percentage a portfolio is going to invest in some of these secured assets in terms of the ETFs themselves. So that in itself, and then you align this with things that are going to be happening from a marketing standpoint. Here's Eric Balchunas. He's talking about 21 shares. Right now, they're talking about a fee of 0.21. Can you imagine? Let me zoom in on that for you guys. Can you imagine if we get no fees for the first 6 months? That's the kind of marketing campaigns I think that will start to dictate the moves in the market, and that could be huge for both ETFs, whether it's a Bitcoin ETF, but I think more importantly, probably the ETH ETF is going to benefit from this in a big way. The other thing I want to get into is if you remove the ETF itself and you just think about ETH by itself, because many people may or may not, watching our show, even go into an ETF as a whole. I'm going to go to another clip here with Matt Hougan. He kind of explains this and what the benefit would be. Take a look.
Even if you remove the ETF from the equation, there are two huge tailwinds in ETH right now, which I think people aren't thinking about. One is that we've removed a great deal of regulatory confusion around ETH. And as an expression of that, you can see that BlackRock built a fund on Ethereum, which holds hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. And I think, so removing the regulatory cloud, I think, is a massive tailwind. And then you have the whole reason I was optimistic on ETH, which is you have the Denkun upgrade, which has solved the scalability problem. And I think that problem was what killed the last bull market, even before FTX sort of drove a dagger in. Fees on ETH spiking to $200 and throughput being totally jammed killed that market. I don't think we've harvested the dividends of the Denkun upgrade at all. And I think that we will. If that upgrade and regulatory clarity in an ETF, then yeah, I think we get to new all-time highs.
Easily on new all-time highs. I think the real question is, where is the trajectory of these bell curves and these adoption cycles? If you look at Maker capturing nearly 40% of all DeFi profits, this is on Ethereum. This came in from Vance Spencer as well. And this is a good example of how ETH is going to be an absolute barn burner in terms of revenue opportunity, especially as we get into tokenized securities. All this plays into the future of the asset class itself, really redefining the financial instruments being used by Wall Street, big companies, banks, institutions, and then what we're going to see in a lot of innovation as well. So a lot happening here, I think, that is only going to take ETH into really a place many people didn't think it could go. I have another clip here from Matt Hougan. This is going into short-term sentiment versus long-term sentiment. So it's just another analysis on what he thinks Ethereum is going to do. Take a look.
What's happening in crypto is all the long-term news is really good. The most constructive long-term outlook I've ever seen. And all the short-term news has been negative. It's Mt. Gox. It's the German government selling. It's Silk Road selling. It's uncertainty around the election, and markets hate uncertainty. And so the short-term negatives are suppressing the long-term positives. But the difference between them is the short-term negatives are one-off non-recurring events, and the long-term positives are recurring ongoing things. And that's just a beautiful thing for long-term investors.
All right, I love the statement there, beautiful thing, because that is exactly the case, and that is runway of how tech companies in many cases look at their opportunity for recurring revenue. And that's exactly what we're talking about with Ethereum, whether it's staking, real world assets, tokenization of securities, all those kind of things are upside for what's going to happen, I think, in the ETH ecosystem. Here, of course, speaking of the political landscape, is Donald Trump's wallet, and he's holding around 10 million right there. And as you can kind of see, ETH being the number one asset in his wallet, Polygon number two, Base, BNB, Avalanche, Arbitrum, Manta. Even though he's speaking at the Bitcoin conference, it seems like he is holding mostly in the side of Ethereum. And remember, he's been in many different NFT projects. He's done a handful of different kinds of fundraising. And I think this is something that he's starting to open up to. There was an article here that broke this down. This was in a just here recently. He says, this is in reference to the NFTs, and he did it 3 times. I'm going to do another one, another collection, because the people want me to do another one. It's an unbelievable spirit. Beautiful. All right. I would say almost all of it was paid in crypto in this new currency, and it opened my eyes. So this gets into someone who's never been in crypto before, never really understood the blockchain, that is starting to get a full understanding of what this really means for the future. So also just a good example here of how politicians, sometimes if educated, can really kind of go to the next level. Moving on to another article here from CoinDesk. Hong Kong is preparing stablecoin legislation as public consultation ends. And you think about what we're dealing with here in the United States, pressure from the SEC, continued lack of education in Congress to be able to get laws and regulations move forward, a administration that continues to push back very hard. Those are all negatives for what we're facing here in the US, but around the world, this is not the case. And what we're seeing in Hong Kong right now is moving continuously to support the ETH ecosystem. They're planning to present a bill on fiat reference stablecoins to the Legislative Council later this year. So it's pretty much all countries taking a look at blockchain, seeing the innovation and saying, I'm not going to get left behind like I was before, when Silicon Valley pretty much ruled the land. So I think this is just another good example of why the United States needs to get things moving very quickly. I want to jump over to another clip. This is Hester Peirce, and she's going to do something I think that gets us into a different framework of what the SEC might be doing in the future. Take a look.
I think certainly something like staking is, or any feature of the product we saw that on the Bitcoin exchange traded products too, right? There were features of the product that some people would have liked to see included but weren't. And those are always open for reconsideration as far as I'm concerned.
All right, as far as she's concerned, always open for reconsideration. She mentioned staking there. If that is in fact the case, you would see an absolute explosion in Ethereum, I think, if we start to see regulatory bodies lay off the idea of where DeFi is going. This opens up I think the opportunity from institutional capital, banking, major companies, innovation, all the things I mentioned earlier, that really kind of takes ETH to the next level, which could be kind of what Matt Hougan and Vance even said, and that is the birth of a next generation asset class that's happening right now in front of us. All right, make sure and subscribe to the channel if you're not already doing so. Like a couple of videos, because this will get you in the algorithm. We'll get more of our videos coming to you. And if you're not in our Diamond Circle, get in right now. It's a great place to get additional content. It's our own private group. We do additional content over there, video analysis, breakdowns on charts, all sorts of analysis on different projects, all of that available in the Diamond Circle just by clicking the link down below. Make sure, of course, if you're not following me out there on X to do that. It's just @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.